Hi everybody, Good Buddy Kyo here. I'm not really used to this. Sorry for the nervousness. I'm not really sure about how to go about this. I mean, it's sort of out of the blue, but I want to at least put what happened out there for other Hetalia fans like myself. I guess I'll just talk, type, or whatever and just get this through. As much of an interesting experience this was, I'd rather not remember it and continue on with my derp life. Alright, so this happened a while ago, before school started, that it went down. But I should probably go back even further to when it really first started. It was when Axis Powers Hetalia was full in swing. Second season was out, still bounding through the fandom and giving out new glorious episodes every Monday. Loden's sister and I were both very involved in the series, which was a rare occasion since she often didn't share interests with me. Oh, sure, I would force myself to get into whatever she was getting into so we could at least have a reason to hang out. But this is the first she came into my fandom without me working for it. It was really nice, considering it was still unknown in our small town. It was even nicer to just have someone to relate to. She and I cosplayed it together, watched episodes together, got merchandise together. You know, the whole kit caboodle, though. She was always able to get more stuff than I was because she actually had a job. At some point, she actually bought a bootleg DVD of Hetalia so she could watch it any time. A picture of which I provided here thanks to my mother lending me her camera for a second before she had it sold the next week. Of course, all the episodes just being ripped from the internet sites that had them subbed. I watched 1 or 2 episodes with her, but really I was content with watching them online, so I left her to it. About 2 to 3 days after she got the DVD, she acted really weird, is the best way I can describe it. In a drop of a hat, she dropped the whole Hetalia series, setting aside her merchandise and shelving her Hetalia cosplays, even selling some of them. When I tried to ask her about what was up, she just said she didn't want to talk about it, to the point that she glared at me even if I mentioned it to her. I was extremely disappointed at losing my sister when it came to her sibling bonding and the fandom. At the time, just figuring she grew out of it or found something even better. That mindset especially fit in when she started to read Homestuck soon after it to have something to do. Now here's where it got even weirder. Now it's been a while since that, probably like a month or so. I'm not sure why, but probably a phone call from my best friend. I got the urge to watch some episodes with just some classic good old Italy. Though currently the internet was being worked on by my father since he was changing phone providers and all that mess, so I decided to look for the Hetalia DVD my sister had. It took me a while, but I found it shoved in the back of the DVD cabinet. Not sure exactly why she shoved it back there. Well, at the time, the bootleg wasn't that bad really. I had fan art of the everyone as chibis around the world with the title on the top. Same for the disc, just printed on fan art. I popped the DVD in the player in my room and decided to look through the episodes to find a really fun one. Maybe when Romano was first introduced. As I went through the episode choice option, though, I found something really weird in between episode 23 and episode 24. For those who don't know, it's the Liechtenstein and Switzerland episodes. Very cute indeed. And the 24th has the conclusion of the access on the island arc thing. There's another square choice, like an episode, but there wasn't really a title next to it, saying what number it was or what the episode was about. Though that wasn't untitled, the caught my interest. But the screenshot of it, it was Italy smiling, looking upwards in a content dazed. His eyes actually opened, mind you, with glistening eyes and what looked like sand, like perhaps he was laying on it. This blew my freaking mind, for this is something new. I've craved for new things in a fandom, always. Perhaps this was a hidden chapter I wasn't aware of, like a bonus episode. I bit my lip and trembled with excitement, and I knew I had this all to myself. Wait until my friends heard about this. I was going to be more knowledgeable than anyone else. Of course, when I look back, I wish that I wouldn't have found it. Without much ado, I clicked the select button on my remote to watch it. The title animation appeared as the always large orchestra playing out for a few seconds to show the Japanese katakana of Hetalia with Axis powers next to it. Soon after, it shifted to the view of the island that the Axis was standing on. Japan and Germany were sitting against the shade of a tree, while Italy just laid in the sand soaking up the sun with that cute dumb look on his face. Now before I go on, I've read stories like this before about lost episodes of cartoons, story that I didn't believe until now, honestly. And I know how they went off about it being extremely bad quality, but this wasn't too bad. Sure, it wasn't the best quality. It was still quite pixelated from being ripped off of a site then burned onto a disc, but it was okay. The sound was just a tad muffled. Nothing too out of the ordinary. Of course, it just kind of made it creepier later on when I was able to see it better. But I'll get into that a bit. Back to the episode. While Italy was sunbathing in his jacket and shorts, the camera cut over to Germany and Japan, though they looked like a tad bit upset, if not a bit worried. And then they started to speak. Two things threw me off. One, there was no subtitles, so I had zero idea what they were talking about. And two, the voices were actually those who voiced them in the series. I was extremely impressed of such raw footage, though it was a bit miffed there was no subs. Oh well, as long as Hiroki Yasumoto, Germany's Seiyu, kept talking, I was happy all the way. The two seemed to be chatting about something serious, Germany clutching his stomach from time to time in pain, as Japan would nod and set a hand on his stomach as well. I guess that they had run out of food and of steady food on the island, so they were starving. That was a kind of downer to the start episode on, but it was only the beginning. There was probably a fun way to get food later on. Just then Ilias called out, having the two of them look up to where he was, which is now currently running around in the ocean. He waved to them, and the two of them waved back unenthusiastically. Both of the other went back to just playing in the sun and water. I didn't notice until then, but the only thing playing in the background of this was the ocean's wave. Something not uncommon, but it certainly kept the atmosphere kind of static. Especially when the focus was to the hungry and worried nations in the shade. But either way, I was too sucked up in just the beautiful new material. I didn't question it. I didn't even care that I didn't know the bulk of it. I mostly cared for the actions anyway. The nations were quiet for a while, before Japan had seemed to ask Germany something, and looked to him in shock, almost exclaiming before being quietly hushed by the island nation, making him whisper in the line instead. Oh, what was Japan thinking, I thought, but Chan had repeated the Japanese statement in a more quiet and clearer tone, not taking his eyes off Italy and the water. For a few minutes the two of them discussed the issue, and obviously talking about the Italian, though soon enough the two of them nodded in agreement. After that moment, even though it was just for a few seconds, Germany had made the saddest face I had ever seen, like he could burst out of tears at any moment, but kept it back. Honestly, inwardly, I flipped my shit at such an emotion, even if it was short, though it made me wonder even more what brought it on. The scene changed to nighttime. The three nations huddled around the fire for warmth, though they seemed at least content with their jackets on. As usual, Italy was fast asleep next to it, sleeping contently while leaving the other two nations to their thoughts. Still, the only sound of the oceans crashed against the shore was heard in the background as the two were silent, though soon enough the camera panned over them, giving each other a subtle nod. In unison, the two stood up, going over to Italy and picking him up very carefully, not wanting to wake him up. At this point, I was extremely confused. What were they planning to do with him? Were they going to a new location? Quietly, they shuffled the sleeping nation over to ocean and carefully set his face down. Japan setting his head over the other's head to keep it still below the water's surface. It didn't take long until Italy began to thrash around, bubbles popping fiercely on the water next to his head, only having Japan press down harder, while Germany was looking away, eyes closed and lip being bitten onto hard. While this was going on, my mouth was hanging ajar. Japan and Germany were drowning Italy. Why? As I just watched this insanity, I recognized those words, "Gomine sai Hetalia," come from Japan. Sorry, Italy? What the hell? About 15 seconds later, which felt like almost forever of watching the poor nation, Italy's limbs fell with a plop in the water, the bubbles ceasing to rise anymore. The deed was done. But why? Japan and Germany picked up the waterlogged Italy and brought him back to the shore, placing him down next to the fire, while Germany sat aside just staring at the fire as if it was contemplating what they just did. Japan unsheathed his sword and kneeled down to the corpse, taking off his own jacket and setting it aside. With one more look to the blonde before backing down, Japan took a deep breath before making an incision from the base of his neck all the way down to his belly button, cutting a bit more so he was able to flip the skin back to reveal the bloody organs of the once living nation. At this, I had to pause the episode, feeling quite lightheaded at this. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. I mean, I read a lot of gory Hetalia stuff, but seeing it done in a Studio Dean style and done in official voices, or if it's fake, a really good artist and very good sound alikes, it was just way too surreal for me. And while I had the TV paused, I had a good chance to look at Italy's insides. God, that sounds so weird as I type this. And they just looked so real. Not that they were hyper cam, but as if the artist had stared at the inside anomaly of a person for hours, drawing every little curve to make it realistic. I wanted to stop watching. I just wanted to turn it off and abandon that TV at the DVD inside, but I was already too far in. I had to see through the end. It would haunt me for the rest of my life if I stopped after here. After taking a short breather and drinking some water, I pressed play on my remote to resume the madness. Instantly, I was greeted by a slurp sound of Japan sliding his hand into Italy's body and pulling out one of the organs out of place. It looked like the liver, which is so detailed it was hard not to mistake the organ. Japan sighed as he cut off the connecting strand with his sword and set the mess of the organ onto the other's discarded jacket before going back in and setting aside a kidney, both of them. While Japan searched around, Germany reached over to some sharpened sticks, just he seemed to have gathered earlier, and penetrated the sharp end through each organ that Japan had laid out. With the side inside, he set the organ kebabs on a range on the fire so it could get cooked, which I didn't know how that was even possible. Once more, after a seemingly long period of time, Germany pulled out the now cooked liver from the fire while handing it to Japan, who accepted it with his arm still smeared with blood. A kidney of both of them was before Japan murmured, "Ita daki kamasu," and both took a large bite from it. Ugh, that still makes me feel weird when I think about seeing that scene. But that lightheadedness faded as I heard something that made me gasp. "Daitsu Nihon?" The both of them turned in shock, the camera panning over to show that Ilya was awake. What? How is he awake? They drowned him! Or was he just unconscious? Hell, I wasn't even sure what was going on, and it seemed like the other two had no idea either. Japan and Germany tried to explain it themselves, but Ilya began to grow more panicked and slowly getting what was happening, and he began to scream in pain, fear, and sadness. I couldn't even pinpoint what emotion was there, but it was so weird to hear him like that. It almost sounded like the man voicing him was in a large amount of pain himself. Germany and Japan went over him, trying to get him to be quiet, though after the large confusion of everyone yelling at once, Germany was the one to finally scream for everyone to be quiet, shaking Italy to try to make him quiet, resulting to just tugging the curl to make him stop momentarily. At this point, when I should have laughed, I was practically at the point of tears. Germany talked to appear strong and tried to explain the situation. My guess of the situation was there was no food left, so they were going to eat Italy since he was the weakest. Though he was a nation, right? They were all nations. Why did they have to resort to that? Was that why Italy woke up? Sure enough, Italy gave an understanding nod, whimpering in pain and fear as well. He sputtered out something, pausing at a point to cough, blood drooling down his chin. Now it was Japan's turn to talk, seeming to try and comfort him in a soothing tone. After a small speech, Italy nodded once more before looking down, seeing that Germany was gripping his hand tightly. With another nod from the German and Japanese nation, Japan went over and scooped his hand into his now somewhat functioning body, pulling and cutting out his spleen and setting it aside. Illy almost screamed, reduced to a sort of mixture of whimpering and sobbing. The camera cut to a view of his and Germany's hand becoming more constricted against each other. The shot panned up to frowning Germany, who once glanced to Japan's work before speaking again, calling Illy's attention. He spoke for a bit, trying to smile, and soon Illy smiled back at him. For once in the series, actually opening his eyes to reveal the golden honey color, and called him the familiar word he used to call him, Captain. Then there was a time skip. Soon, a large portion of organs was lying in Illy's jacket. Things I could recognize being intestines, pancreas, bladder, practically everything but the brain, lungs, and heart. Japan wiped an arm to his forehead, smearing it with blood accidentally before impaling them on stakes and sticking near the fire. He turned back to Germany, who was holding Illy's hand. He crawled over to get a closer look, and Illy seemed to pass on again, his eyes lightly glistening, staring blankly upwards with a small smile on his face. The shot was the very one showed in the menu. Japan looked up to Germany, and seeing that he was frowning, blue eyes glistening with tears, as he still tried to get over having this happen to him. Japan set a hand on his shoulder, murmuring something seemingly comfortably, making Germany nod in agreement, and started shaking. Japan frowned slightly before he moved aside, grabbing the dead Italian's free hand and squeezing it lightly, saying something to Germany, before looking to the fire where the organs were roasting. Germany glanced back to the fire a moment before looking up at the sky where Illy was staring, the camera panning upwards toward it, past the stars and everything until it was completely back, and then the next episode started playing, just like that, no credits or anything, just left the episode on a cryptic or optimistic note. I have no idea. I wish I could run it on my computer and get screenshot, but the disc refuses to play on here for some reason. I don't really have a good camera to snap a clear picture. My friend Thea was kind enough to get 2 screenshots for me, though the disc only worked on her computer for so long. But I'd rather not look at it again. It may not sound as bad when you read this, but that made me get away from Hetalia for a while, honestly. Though I'm not as weak-stomached as my sister, I still love the series, and I will continue to love it. But since then, I refuse to watch any anime episode. I would prefer to see a fan-made gore over official ones anytime. So, hi.